Sweet potatoes are root tubers that can be propagated from their stems or slips. As you can see here, these are slips from an already existing sweet potato plant. It all started 6 months ago when I wanted to grow sweet potato for the first time. I came across some sweet potato slips in an already existing plant, and I decided to take this opportunity and grow this sweet potato for the first time. Little did I know that it would be so easy to cultivate sweet potatoes. So I took the slips and started cutting them at least 2 centimeters, and the base were towards their nose. And the most interesting part of it was that I was going to grow this sweet potato in sacks and containers, both vertically and horizontally. So it was a bit very interesting to try. So from the slips that I harvested from that sweet potato, I was able to cut over 20 more slips and plant them individually so that I'll be able to optimize my chances of having so many other potatoes. Unlike Irish potatoes, sweet potatoes are crawling crop and they will definitely produce more slips as they grow. So I went ahead to plant this thing in the horizontal sack that I placed and also in the vertical sack that I placed. So if you can look closely, you see that I planted some of them straight and I also planted some of them lying on the sack. Some people also believe that you should also root your sweet potato slips in water before actually planting them. Well, that works in some cases, but in Nigeria, most things don't usually work when you root them in water, especially when it comes to food and vegetable gardening. But when it comes to house plants, most of the rooting can be definitely done in water, and that works perfectly fine, but not in this case of vegetable gardening, food gardening, or rooting of any food crop in water. Sweet potatoes are actually meant to be grown on a flat land, on an open field, where these roots are able to, get direct contact with this ground and penetrate into the soil so that they'll be able to form larger tubers. But in this case of having a small space or not having a very sufficient land space that you're going to grow this, growing this in sacks is actually a good idea so that you'll be able to optimize your space and also grow your own food at home. Of course, your harvest from sacks will not be that big enough to be compared with the harvest from an open field per unit area, but nevertheless, it's not a bad idea to grow your own potatoes in sacks from slips. So if you don't have access to a farmland or a slip from an already matured plant, you can also go ahead to grow your own slips, and it's very easy to do that. To grow your own potato slips, you have to put some potato in soil, and like I said before, some prefer to use water in rooting this to form their own slips. But you can do this perfectly in Nigeria here in soil. So I put this in soil and let them grow their own slips, and then after some days you'll be able to cut them and then replant it for your sacks. So don't forget that the slips should be cut at least 2 centimeters away from each other. Now this slips is not actually going to be as strong as the one that comes from an already existing farmland, but nevertheless a slip is a slip and it will end up growing potato. So you just plant this, and I planted this one at the side of the sack while I planted the others on the head of the sack, inside the sack. So I planted this one at the side of the sack and they are also doing perfectly fine. So you can see the potato that was used to grow those slips, we are also going to plant it after it stopped generating more slips. We're going to plant it at the top of the sack after it stopped generating more slips, because it's going to also grow into a potato plant on its own. So you can see after the slip cultivation, you can see all those roots that were formed by the potato that was used to generate those slips. So some of the potatoes, after they form their slips for some days or some weeks, they will end up dying and decaying there. So when you notice any form of decay by any of the potatoes that are used to generate slips, you should remove those kind of potatoes to avoid the decay spreading to other potatoes that are there. So after the first set of harvesting of slips, we also had the second set of harvesting of slips, the third set of harvesting of slips, and I kept on harvesting slips from the potato over and over and over. And the secret to doing this was to always water the plant during the time that it was growing, so that it will be able to have more reason to grow more slips daily. So the slips were growing and regrowing and growing and regrowing, and I was cutting them to plant daily until I filled up the space on the side of the plant. And you can see that after some months, the potato that I was using to plant the slips, I had to remove it to plant it directly in soil. The roots from the sweet potato that I was using to generate the slips were very well defined, and they needed to also be planted because I've gotten as much slips that I needed to plant in sacks. So I also planted that at the top of the sacks, and you can see that the ones at the side of the sacks are already growing so big and perfectly. And that was how I grew sweet potatoes from the slips that I generated from a store-bought potato. If this video gets up to 10,000 views or 20,000 views and everybody decides to grow sweet potatoes in sacks from slips, that would be a very happy thing for me to hear, that 20,000 people or 10,000 people were able to use this video as a quality information to grow their own potatoes.